What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Knicks Recap Podcast. I'm your host, Troy, and you could be anywhere in the world this afternoon, but you chose to be here with me, and I really do appreciate that. It's the Knicks. It's Boston. Is New York the biggest threat to Boston? We're going to break that down. We're also going to talk about the Knicks' backup center situation. If anybody didn't hear, Precious Achiuwa is out for the next several weeks due to a strained left hamstring. So because of that, the Knicks had to make a major decision on what they're going to do on the backup center situation. We're going to get to that. But in order to get to all this information and break down all these reports, I needed to contact somebody. So what did I do? I contacted one of, if not the best beat writer for the Knicks ever. And I'm talking about somebody who covered the team for 23 years. The legend returns again. I'm talking about the one, the only, the always amazing Marc Berman. Marc, what's going on, my friend? How you doing today? Thank you so much for joining the show.
Hey, Troy. Thanks so much for that great introduction. Once I feel I'm out, you drag me right back in, and I'm excited for the season. It's been an incredible offseason, and Knicks fans are super excited, and that's even with all the baseball stuff going on.
Right.
You can't temper the excitement going on right now with Knicks fans.
You know, the Liberty just won a chip. Shout out to those ladies. Right. They just won a chip. So we got a chip in New York already. We're trying to get another one with the Knicks. Before we get into the Knicks stuff, and obviously we're going to get into the Knicks stuff. I'm talking to Marc Berman. We're going to get into the Knicks stuff. But when it comes to just speaking to you, you are obviously I call you semi-retired. The reason I say that is because, and this is perfect to go to the segue to your Twitter profile. If you're not following Marc Berman, by the way, I don't know what you're doing. He may be retired, but he also says on his actual Twitter bio, he speaks about the Knicks when the spirit moves him. And I try to get the spirit to move him every single time he's on this show. Please try to follow him. Again, his @'s on screen. He's a former New York Knicks writer and obviously tennis writer now, stringing with the Palm Beast Post. And again, dishing with the for the Knicks whenever he gets a chance to. Marc, I just got to say again, you in your retirement, you're doing so many different things. You talk about the Knicks, you do cover tennis, obviously. You also write about basketball still. We Orlando Magic. I read a couple of pieces that you've done about that. You're also even helping the youth now. Before we get into all of that, can we just say a little bit of a thank you to you? I mean, not a lot of people in retirement are this busy. You are quite busy, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm not doing retirement well. I actually this morning just wrote up a Miami Heat preview on how they stack up in the Eastern Conference, and it's not very well. Listen, Reggie Miller on TNT's conference call says it's the Knicks. They're the team to beat outside the Celtics. They're Boston's major threat. And Stan Van Gundy just trashed Miami. He said they just don't have the roster to compete in the Eastern Conference. But anyway, yeah, I've been doing stringing for the Palm Beach Post, all sorts of sports, enjoying it, enjoying the versatility. You know, when you cover the Knicks for 23 years, it's just one topic, every single day. And, it does get a little tiring, but to watch it a little more from afar is just a thrill. I've just enjoyed, since I retired, to see what the Knicks have done since then. My last full season was when they did not make the playoffs in that horrifying year when Julius Randle kind of, crashed back to earth.
Right. And the great part about it, I was thinking about it today, and I knew I was going to obviously interview. I was thinking to myself, I wish Berman was on the beat today because he deserved the season for 23 years. We couldn't have given you a magical season like this. You deserve the run, but you know what? Today is where we start it all off. Like I said, I brought you back in. Let's start it all off and talk about it again. We got to talk about what's going to happen tomorrow. I think you just alluded to it. The Knicks taking on the Boston Celtics. And really the question is New York the biggest threat to the Celtics? And obviously the game tomorrow night is going to be at 7:30. We're going to Boston. Obviously that Garden, a lot of Knicks fans do not consider it the Garden. They obviously consider MSG to be the Garden. But there's a lot of things to think about here when you're considering the Knicks and their roster, right? Because even when you look at the Knicks roster right now, they have 12 players on traditional contracts. 3 are on two-way contracts, so they don't even have a full roster yet. They're still waiting to make that move, and obviously they have some time here before they get hit with a penalty, but the clock is ticking and they do need to make a move. And for everybody who doesn't know, they can see the roster on screen right now. I'll just say it out loud. Here's the Knicks roster for you. It's Jacob Toppin, Campaign, Miles McBride, Josh Hart, Macomb Dadier, Precious Achiuwa, OG Anunoby, Kevin McCullough Jr., Jalen Brunson, Tyler Kolek, Jericho Sims, Mitchell Robinson. Mitchell Robinson, so funny to say. Mikal Bridges, Karl Anthony Towns, and the rookie, Ariel Hukporty. So that's the Knicks roster. And obviously with the Celtics, they're the reigning defending champions. Mark, a lot of people thought that the NBA is giving us this matchup because this was supposed to be the matchup in the Eastern Conference Finals. If the Knicks had been healthy, a lot of people believe this would have been the matchup. So, you mentioned it before, so I'll just throw it right back to you. With the Knicks facing Boston tomorrow, do you think that New York, as presently constructed, is the biggest threat to the Boston Celtics?
Yeah, listen, on paper, the Sixers do stack up, but I think the Knicks are a better matchup against the Celtics than Philadelphia is because of what Leon did in the offseason, getting McCall and Towns. And, McCall, to me, when they first made the great trade, I thought it was insurance for OG. But, hopefully OG will stay healthy. And if OG is healthy in a Boston series and he'll be healthy, in the season opener, it's going to be interesting to see who's guarding Tatum, who's guarding Jaylen Brown, and how they defend all the weapons. Porzingis is still not around, of course. An old story that I used to write. But listen, it's a great barometer for them to see how they defend Boston. And I think they match up better against Boston than Philly. However, if Philly and the Knicks have to face off, unfortunately in the second round, you know, the Sixers are scary to me because I really love Paul George and the underrated addition of Caleb Martin, who played here in Miami. So I saw him play a lot, and he's a winner, and he does a lot of things as a role player that the Heat are going to really miss, and it's going to help Philadelphia. Tobias Harris, I don't know what happened to him. He's never been an intangible player, Tobias, but he really crashed and burned against the Knicks, and they'll have Martin in a long series against the Knicks that would help them. But yeah, I still think the Knicks are the biggest threat after the Towns trade. Before the Towns trade, I know, Knicks fans are still skeptical about this trade. Before the Towns trade, I still was thinking that Philadelphia was going to be the biggest threat. But I like this trade. I think they're more durable. Listen, Towns has gotten hurt before, but Julius Randle, no one really talks about it. Julius, the last 2 years, he's broken down. He's not getting younger. Right. And I was concerned about how Julius would fit in with the new Jalen. And Jalen became Kobe. He wanted the ball. He wanted to drive. He wanted to create. And Julius likes the ball too. Towns is a different type of player, and that's why they brought him in.
And the thing is, when that trade initially happened, I don't know, people were shocked initially. I don't think people expected a trade to happen so close to training camp. I think that was more of a shocker as well too. But then for Towns, the way it happened, I think a lot of people, once they kind of settled in on it, and then you see the pick and roll, the pick and pop between Towns and Brunson. I mean, the possibilities are endless, the way the floor stretches between those two. And they haven't really, in my opinion, even run anything that I think, it's preseason, right? So I don't really know what Tom Thibodeau. I feel like there's something left that we haven't seen. We're going to see it against Boston. But I want to ask, with the lineups, obviously, with the Knicks, being really shorthanded right now, especially at the backup center position, where we're going to get to, do you think for lineup right now on opening night, if the Knicks go into Boston and they beat Boston, is that a major win, a major statement? Is it basically setting the league on fire, letting them know the Knicks are back, we're here?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, first of all, the Celtics will be celebrating their 18th championship with the ring ceremony, and the place is going to be absolutely wild. Listen, I took a fall foliage trip a few days ago. I was in New York and New England. And when I was in New England and Connecticut, I was in a bookstore, and the owner sort of figured out who I was. And he just said to me, "What's wrong with the Knicks?" And I was like, "What do you mean? I mean, they look really good." He goes, "Oh, yeah, it's all hype." People in New England are still laugh at the Knicks. They think that the Knicks fans celebrating a second round, straight second round berths is a joke. They just won their 18th championship. The Knicks haven't won since 1973. But he did listen. He acknowledged that the Knicks are better, but the history. He says, what's the common thread that has prevented the Knicks from not winning a title since 1973? And I had to say, it's the owner. And I think the Knicks are built well enough right now, and Dolan has learned his lesson. And I think even Dolan can't interrupt this season from potential greatness.
I hope he can't because honestly, I don't think I've lived long enough to be this hype for a season before, Mark. It's the most hype I've ever been. The trades happened. The Mikal trade took me to another level. Then the Cat trade, obviously I felt a certain way about it after you process it and then you see it, actually on court. It just turns into something even more spectacular. But since we're on the roster here real quick, I want to just, get your opinion on something. There are reports going out there right now from Steph Bondy of the New York Post. And he basically reported that the Knicks are currently looking to potentially sign a veteran, either Marcus Morris Sr. or Lonnie Walker the fourth, to replace Landry Shamet, who obviously is out because he has a dislocated shoulder. Just quick thoughts on that. Do you think the Knicks are rushing to sign either of those players? And would you want to see the Knicks sign either of those players to fill in one of those roster spots at this point?
Yeah, I'm sure Thibodeau would love to have Morris on the roster, just the toughness and veteran leadership that he could bring.
Right.
The Shamet, listen, we talked about how injuries derailed the Knicks against the Pacers, and it's already starting with Precious and Shamet. And I think they'll bring back Shamet because he's a hell of a shooter. But yeah, I think they could use a Morris to help with rebounding and some toughness. He's an undersized, power forward. It's not the answer, but in the short term, it might be a good move. But I'm still wary of injuries.
Yeah.
With this roster, I'm wary about OG. I feel this Knicks team could possibly beat Boston in a long series if OG is healthy, and they have a full roster ready to go. But I am concerned that OG is going to be off and on this season again. If that's his injury history, that's really my only concern. And Towns has had injuries, but fully healthy. And if Miles McBride, and I love Miles, and you know, I think maybe they should put him in the starting lineup with Brunson and take Hart out. I
Yes.
think Miles has really improved that 3-point shot. When I was covering him, he was streaky. He would have one game where he was lights out, and then he would go 1 for 7. But I just think that this team is built to really give Boston a scare, a major scare.
It's funny that you mentioned McBride in the starting lineup. I've been preaching that ever since Hart made it known that he doesn't want to be in the starting lineup where he feels lost. And, I know Hart trolls, and I get he does. He did something similar to that last year where he said he has no role in the offense, right? And then he started to blossom. Maybe it's like that, but I've never heard somebody say lost before. So that was a little concerning for me. And even Jalen Brunson acknowledged the fact that he even took the blame. He said, it's on me. I have to be better, as a captain to kind of lead this team, in a better way. So, it's curious to me that, we're talking about Miles McBride entering the lineup because I feel like with Achiuwa gone now, you need rebounding on the bench. You put Hart there, you get the rebounding. He's more free to play coast to coast basketball like we usually see him do. And then Deuce, he's not hesitating anymore, to your point. He catches it, he's shooting that ball. And most times it's going in. So I absolutely agree. It's concerning though. Any thoughts on just Josh Hart saying he's lost in the offense there?
Listen, he is a little bit of a drama queen, and I think he's someone who likes the attention. And he knew if he said this, there'd be headlines about Hart. 2 points all preseason. He obviously, I think he averaged about 13 points in the postseason. He did everything out on the court, including score. And I think he's frustrated, and I think it was a cry for help. And I think he's signaling to Thibodeau, I won't be crushed if you brought me off the bench where I might be able to have a bigger offensive role and help the team more. It's not crazy. And Miles, listen, people close to Miles say that's his goal is to start. His goal is to be a starting guard in this league. And I think with his new 3-point shot, I think he's earned it. And, he's a great defender. Listen, Brunson and Miles, it's undersized, but they won when they started that lineup. It's a winning lineup. Both are winners and both are gritty. And Miles is just a supreme defender. I mean, no matter what his height might be, he's a great backcourt defender. I would like to see it. I mean, listen, they could start off in Boston with Josh, obviously, but
Right.
listen, if Josh is still feeling unhappy and you need him to be happy, and because he does everything, he gets loose balls and rebounds, and
Mm-hmm.
if he's open, he can hit the three. That's a concern, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tibbs made a lineup change. I don't know if you specifically asked about it today, but I mean, imagine right now you've had this set lineup all preseason. You got to go with what you've had, but I wouldn't be surprised for a change.
I think he was asked that obviously Tom Thibodeau type of answer. It's he has to talk to Hart or something like that. I
Oh, he
forget what it
did.
was. Yeah, it was something to that
Did he
effect. But
say everything's on the table? 'Cause everything's on the table is one of his cliches,
he
which could be a 50-50 proposition.
he said we have enough. that was
Okay.
that was the classic thing. Like, as soon as he said that, I knew that we were in regular season mode. As soon as that happened, because that was just like, oh, okay, we were out of preseason now. So, and one thing we have to talk about, we mentioned at the top of the show, it's really the backup center situation. This has actually gotten worse and worse as we continue to look at it. The Knicks actually have made a decision on their backup center situation. More forced to do it though, Mark, because I mean, at this point, you lost Mitchell Robinson till January 2025. That's an estimate, by the way, in terms of rehab. He could miss more time. We have no idea. Precious Achiuwa, he just injures his left hamstring. He strains it out for 2 to 4 weeks. That's an evaluation. Then he has to go do contact, all these other type of things. That's several weeks that he's missing. So we don't know when he's coming back. So right now, Knicks have Karl Anthony Towns. They have Jericho Sims, and to an extent, they have the rookie Ariel Huckporty. So in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, who's going to be the backup? Because the Knicks really haven't shown any type of faith in Jericho Sims over the time he's been there, although maybe injuries had some part to do with it. And Huckporty during the preseason has actually done something where he showed at least something on offense where he's aggressive. It makes it that it's 5-on-5. And if he can rebound, block, and do that on offense, I'm looking at Sims a little bit, Mark, and I'm thinking to myself, well, and this guy can do a pick and roll with Payne and Kolek as well. I'm looking at that. So I think about that, and then I think of the report that I get from Ian Bagley here, where he says that, it's fair to assume that Tom Thibodeau still goes with Sims ahead of Huckporty because of Sims' experience. But he does make the question of, will Sims eventually get that role outplayed from him by Huckporty? And he thinks that that could be the case, given that Tom Thibodeau has been a huge favor to him given preseason. Just your thoughts right now with the Knicks backup center situation. How do you feel about it? And what do you think about Jericho Sims being the backup for this team, a championship contending team in the Knicks?
Well, it's pretty lousy that we're talking about Jericho Sims and Huckporty. I mean, it's lousy that we have to
Right.
analyze them. But Jericho, listen, I covered him, his early in his career, and he just hasn't improved offensively. But he jumps out of the gym, he gets offensive rebounds, he's a live body, but still defensive IQ. Even when I was covering him, he was so often, as to use that word, lost on the defensive end. Sometimes he'd be out of position, and it's still a factor with him. And if Porty could show a little more intelligence on defense, I think he could outplay him. But listen, he's a rookie, so Thibodeau definitely has to go with Jericho initially,
Right.
because he's 4 years in the league, I believe. But I wouldn't be surprised if the kid. I guess he played in Australia. He had some
Right.
professional playing experience. He's not coming right out of college, so I would imagine Jericho. He is what he is. He's never going to be an offensive player, but it's a lousy situation. Listen, I know there's been talk about a trade, and I like that kid in Charlotte, Richards. He's a big body, 7 foot, gets offensive rebounds. If they could just get him for draft picks, I don't know if Charlotte would be that desperate just to unload him like that. But I'm sure that Leon and Wes are working the phones at this point with Precious with a tricky hamstring. Mitchell, it's clear that they're very concerned, even when he comes back. Is he going to get injured again? It's not unlike Mitchell to get multiple injuries in a season. So,
Right. We just saw it.
with the feet, Mitchell his whole career. I love Mitchell's game. He's unique. No, there's very few players like him. He's a terrific offensive rebounder. I think he could be a great alley-oop guy with Jalen if they play more together. But it's all about health with him, and it's very clear that the Knicks are worried. They see all the X-rays,
Yeah.
and if they're shopping him a lot, there may be greater concern than Thibodeau will let on. Naturally, Leon Rhodes doesn't speak to the media, so we'll never know exactly what he might be thinking. But Yeah, Huck Porty could eventually edge out Jericho, but I'd love to see Jericho get a shot. He's such an athlete,
Right.
such a rebounder. Again, defensive IQ is an issue.
It's always been an issue for him. It's also just like he sticks in the paint like an anchor. He doesn't move without the ball a lot. And I think all the centers right now, even Precious Achiuwa, Tom Thibodeau commented on the other night, when he's moving, he's almost unstoppable because of his force, his athleticism, the way he can attack the rim. Huck Porty the same way. Jericho Sims could do that with the athleticism that he has, but he just doesn't put two and two together. So I agree. The IQ on the basketball court needs to improve. I hope actually that, with the new bigs that we have, the new big man specialists that we have, with Ella Harrington, Mark Bryant, that he could, develop a little bit. Maybe we'll see that over the course of the time here. But you did go into something that I wanted to talk about, and that's the Mitchell Robinson aspect. A lot of people still don't want to acknowledge it, but, the Knicks have been trying to trade Mitchell Robinson since July. They've been trying to trade him with Karl Anthony Towns to get that deal done with Julius Randle, but then obviously that didn't work. And then even after the Towns trade happens, Mark, there's reports coming out from, shout out to Chris Persiani, that says the Knicks are now receiving and taking calls on center Mitchell Robinson. They don't know if they're going to get a deal. It's unknown at this point. The reason it's unknown is because Mitchell Robinson's value is, at the floor. There's no value for somebody that number one, like you said, you don't know when he's going to return. And if he does,
Right.
how long does he stay healthy for before he, goes south again and then gets injured? That's the whole thing. I understand the Knicks want to move on for him, Mark, and they want to trade him. But at this point, is it a meaningless point to do? Because it doesn't seem like you're going to be able to get anything that you want for him. It seems like they're forced to wait until the deadline.
Yeah, it's almost like if they make a trade, maybe they're thinking to get some futures to
Right.
put together in another trade, like get some more draft picks to make a further trade down the line. Listen, it is win now, but it's a very young team, and there is a future beyond the season. Uh, but listen, it's always been an issue with Mitchell. I'd hate to see them try. I wish they could hang on to him for this one season and see if he's healthy and roll the dice because he could be a major impact in the playoffs, especially against Philadelphia and Embiid if they have to face them. And but again, if they're given and I just hope they don't make a lateral trade and get some, you know, average type of player just to fill the gap because Mitchell won't be healthy to January. I'd rather suffer some more losses
Yep.
in December than this is all about the postseason. It's
Yep.
all about Mitchell being healthy in the postseason. So I don't want to see Mitchell traded just because Thibodeau wants to have 50 wins, which, by the way, it's incredible that the Knicks have not had back-to-back 50-win seasons since 1993, 94, and 94, 95. I mean, I am amazed that all through the 90s, I thought, they were more in the 50-win range, but just those two straight seasons there and trying to do it again and think they will.
I hope they can. Obviously with the roster we have the championship aspirations. Obviously, I think when the chemistry clicks, we saw it. I think in one quarter against the Wizards, when the defense is there, the shooting is there, and you figure the shooting is going to come for Towns, it's going to come for Mikal. You hope it's going to come for these guys. If it does come and we get everything clicking, this Knicks team, as again we've seen it on paper as well too, they're dangerous. Last question for me, Mark, before we go to the chat, because if I don't go to the chat, they're lighting up. Last time you were on, they got mad at me because we couldn't go to you. We couldn't go to the chat. So this time I made time for it. So my last question, I always ask you this. I actually have a great photo, and I hope you watch the playback of this because I have a great photo of Leon right on the screen right now. It's hilarious for you. Uh, for Leon Rose, you said it. He made two major moves that made the Knicks championship contenders. It was Mikal Bridges, Karl Anthony Towns. Now, some of those moves, even to prepare for those moves, he took a lot of heat because a lot of people didn't understand what he was doing for the first couple of years. A lot of people thought he was standing still, but reality was he was kind of making sure the Knicks were in a place where they could make a trade like this, right? So now the moves are done. We are where we are. We're in championship contention. If you could grade the Knicks offseason and the job that Leon Rose has done to make us the team that we are right now, how would you grade it? And what comments do you have about Leon and the job that he's done?
Well, listen, he's done an excellent job building this roster, but I would rather grade it after this season. It's still two straight second round ousters. And, you could question, is the roster durable enough? But you could say that about a lot of rosters. But he really did a fine job. After the McCall trade, we the sentiment was, all right, they're done. And for him to pull this one out of his hat was really remarkable. And he kept it quiet. He is amazing at keeping a secret. Uh, Leon doesn't talk to the press, but even like he makes sure his CAA agents, Towns of CAA, and even like Woj all summer, they're working on the Towns trade all summer, and no one's talking about it.
Right.
And Woj, who's now moved on, but even Woj may have known, but wasn't decided not to report it. But so he keeps a secret very well, which really Dolan appreciates that a lot. And when Leon doesn't talk to the press in 3 years, Dolan's fine with it. In fact, Dolan probably encourages it. I think your job as president, as Knicks president, as every other New York sports president does, is speak to the media on a semi-regular basis. And that's where he falls short. I really think that, especially after the McCall trade and the Towns trade, he should address the media and talk about the future and the vision. But he has made plenty of good moves to put them in a really good position. But a third straight second round KO, I mean, that's not good. I know they're young, and I know there's next season, and Towns is still young, and Jalen is still in his prime. Uh, so, and Bridges is still in his prime, and OG. So they're still young, but a third straight second round KO, I think fans are going to start to, get a little concerned, especially if it's about injuries. But right now, you have to give him an A minus going into the season.
I said, well, first of all, that's probably the best grade I think you've ever given Leon. I think I want to make that known because I've heard all the grades you've given him. And honestly, I think he deserves that. But again, I could ask you questions all day, Mark. I mean, it's easy to talk to you, especially when you're talking to somebody who's so knowledgeable about the Knicks. That's why I love getting you on to get the season preview with you so everybody understands your knowledge, obviously, what you can still give back. But also, just to hear from you each and every year. If I don't hear from Berman, it's not a regular. I feel weird. It's not a regular season. You know how many people contacted me about this interview? They told me like, "Hey, when's the interview coming? I don't feel right. The season doesn't feel like it's coming." I had to do it, but again, I just always thank you so much for giving us your time and always, showing love to the show and coming on and giving us your honest take. I love that. There's nothing hiding behind your takes. It's always straightforward and clear with you. So I really appreciate that, Mark. But we have a huge chat. A lot of people in here. I'm gonna go to some questions really quick and see what people have to say to Marc Berman. So give me a second, guys. If you have a question, now's the time to do it. And you guys see the new screen. Now you can see me and Mark as we read the chat. So new screen for everybody here. Let's see. Alan Bradley says, Rose has to allow Thibodeau time to see what he has. Replacing DiVincenzo/Shamet with Lonnie Walker is the only move left to make right now. Would you agree with that? Do you think that the Lonnie Walker move is really the last move the Knicks need to make really where they are?
I mean, it gives them insurance, but the thing is, Shaman is supposed to be back. I mean, they cut him, but with the idea when he gets healthy, they want him back. So he's a nice player, and he could hit from the outside. I've always liked him coming out of the draft. It's not a bad move, but that probably means the end of bringing Shaman back, who they really, really liked. But again, I know it would be nice to get 50 wins or 54 wins or whatever, but I hope they're just patient and like not every game is the Super Bowl. I mean, with Tom Thibodeau, it is, and that's why I've always been concerned about Thibodeau as a championship winning coach because he dwells on the regular season too much and he keeps his starters in the game with 4 minutes left, up 22 points. So it's a nice move, but I think the Knicks could live without it if they have a feeling that Shamet is going to be healthy in time in 6 weeks or so.
Okay, let's go. Well, first of all, thank you for that comment, and first of all, thanks to the chat for giving us that information as well. Let's see what other information that we have. Everybody's asking other questions here. Let's see. What other questions do we have for Mark? Sorry, there's so many questions. Okay, this is from Killa Kamikaze, and he says, can you ask Berman if he thinks Hart will find more success with the second unit? Because starting, he looks lost and having donut stats. And obviously, we talked about this, but please go ahead if you want to just answer that again.
I think if Josh wants to come off the bench, he should. I think those comments that he made the other night was telling Thibodeau, make the move. If you think, don't worry about my ego. And that's a great thing about Josh. The fact that he just wants to win and he feels that he might help the team win coming off the bench with the second unit, getting a few more touches on offense, being able to, get some rugged, gritty baskets and maybe hit a three-pointer here and there. Again, he doesn't get any touches essentially with this starting unit. And no one knew. It takes a while to develop a chemistry, and maybe they'll develop a better chemistry. And Jalen said, I'm the leader. I got to figure this out. Well, it's really Tom who has to figure it out. And I think it's going to happen. I can't imagine him making the change again versus the Celtics because they haven't had that unit. But I think it's in the works. I really do. Josh would not have said that so publicly if he didn't believe it should happen.
For me, I'm saying it again. I think that Josh Hart put it out there for the same reasons that we all know he did, because he knows what we all know, Mark. He and that starting unit, while he can do great things in it, and we've acknowledged what he can do, the limitations are it can't be 4-on-5. It can't not be 4-on-5, because then everybody's going to double Cat and Brunson. Nobody's going to go to him. And we've seen it happen before as well, too. We've seen it during the preseason. He keeps passing. And even though the outlet passes are great, need to see a little bit more. And I appreciate that. One last question for Mark, and then it's over because, again, I can't keep Mark way too long. I appreciate all the time, Mark. Let's see. Yorkle says for Mark, who is the second scoring option now that Randall is gone? I see Cat as the third option the way he plays the game. That is a very weird comment. I mean, obviously it's Cat, right? I mean, maybe the third option is more the question. I think that should be the question, right?
Well, listen, Cat is the second option.
Right.
I mean, some games he won't be the second leading scorer or top scorer. But listen, in preseason, he would score from the post. I mean, I would love to see him score more from the post. And I think he showed glimpses of that. And, his three-point shot was off. But, it's preseason, and he's always been a very solid three-point shooter, which is why the trade made sense. You lost Dante, who was just a fantastic three-point shooter. But again, with Dante, listen, it was one playoff where he just caught fire. He had a great regular season, and then the first round against Sixers, he started off very slowly, and I think there was one game Thibodeau, took him out of the lineup. Not of the lineup, but he didn't close with them, and maybe that was something that he was shouting at Thibodeau the other night. But listen, Dante has really established himself as a great three-point shooter, but Towns is solid, and he could really 27 points a game. I mean, he's the second option. But McCall could get hot. And OG doesn't need the ball. It's a beautiful situation. OG doesn't need the ball, but when he gets the ball, he'll hit the three. He doesn't have to touch it for 4 possessions. He gets it on the 5th one, and he nails the three. That was the most impressive thing I saw about OG last season. But Towns is the second option, and some nights he's going to outscore Jalen.
I absolutely agree. I think that makes a lot of sense. And chat gang, I went to you guys. You can't blame me now. That's all the time we have for the legend, Marc Berman. It's such a pleasure to always talk with you. We're going to do this again. If the Knicks make another crazy move, we're definitely going to have to do it again. But again, thank you so much for your time today, Mark. Your insight, nobody else can match it. That's why we always have you each and every season. And I can't wait to see what the Knicks do this season, because I do expect it to be a magical run. And I think you would agree with that as well, too.
Yeah, it's going to be great, and you're doing a great job on the show. With a big following, and I really appreciate you having me on. Even though I'm in Florida, it makes me feel like I'm back in New York every time I'm on the show. So, thanks so much for having me, and keep up the great work.
Always, Mark, and thank you so much for joining the show. We're always going to have you back. Even when you think you're out, I promise you, I will slowly but surely pull you right back in, because we need Berman's comments. It's not a regular season if we do not hear from Marc Berman. Again, thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate you.